But let's talk about Iran. A ton to get through on Iran. First, nobody knows what's going to happen. I think I can stipulate. We continue to be thinking of waiting out more negotiation. The Wall Street Journal reporting maybe a limited strike. We could put that one up. That is, where is that one, guys? That's number. Got a long list of elements. There it is. Trump, this Wall Street Journal reported this yesterday. Trump weighs initial limited strike to force Iran into nuclear deal. Now, the problem with that is some people say a limited strike would be the worst of all worlds, which is it would just cause Iran to retaliate and walk away from negotiating, rather than what the article suggests. Some people in the administration believe a limited strike would focus their minds and get them to the table. The Washington Post kind of leans in the other way with their lead story, number 110, a map showing all the assets. We've all seen these maps now that are in the region. And the headline, Trump appears ready to attack Iran as U.S. strike force takes shape. So that's leaning into a bigger strike. David Sanger of the New York Times leans into the notion, which we've been talking about here, 113. President hasn't really explained this. He hasn't made the case for war. You see some in Congress demanding war powers resolution. Headline is Trump weighs Iran strikes. He declines to make clear case for why or why now. Mr. Trump has never consistently described his goals, and when he talks about them, it is usually in a haze of brief offhand comments. The president's given no speeches, etc. Very persuasive column. In fact, actually, Craig, David Sanger is one of the best in the business. So persuasive that here's another person who echoed Sanger. She referenced having read his story. This is Rachel Campos on Fox and Friends just a little bit ago.
I think that the president needs to make a better case as to why this is in American interest to potentially go into a kinetic war. I don't think the case has been made sufficiently for me. If you read the New York Times, there's a lot of people who also feel that way. If you're going to get us potentially into a war, you have to explain why it matters to us, not to other countries, but to us.
Yeah. So Campos says, got to explain it better. Even Brian Kilmeade, additionally, I'll say Brian Kilmeade chimed in and seemed to agree. Lawrence, not so sure. Now, if that weren't enough to table set Larry and Jaime on this, you know how often you'll hear somebody say, a politician or a government official will say, I'm not going to negotiate in public. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this morning on Morning Joe, there was negotiating in public because the Iranian foreign minister showed up for an extended interview, after which Joe talked to a Trump administration official, and they were basically negotiating in public. Here is the Iranian foreign minister talking about the inability of the United States, at least he claims, to destroy their nuclear program. 103, please.
Is that there is no military solution for Iran's nuclear program. That has been tested last year, and there were a huge attack on our facilities, on our, they killed and assassinated our scientists, but they couldn't kill our nuclear program. Why? Because it is developed by ourselves, by our scientists. This is a technology developed by us, belongs to us. And it cannot be destroyed by bombings, militarily. The only solution is diplomacy. This is why the U.S. is back to, in the table of negotiation and is seeking a deal. And we are prepared for that. We are prepared for, war, and we are prepared for peace. We are prepared for diplomacy, and we are prepared for negotiation as much as we are prepared for war.
Pretty incredible. All right, here's what he said when asked what he would say to the president. This is 104, please.
What would your message be to the president and the members of Congress?
Well, the message is that previous U.S. administrations, even the current U.S. administration, have tried almost everything against us. A war, sanctions, snapback, everything. But none of them worked. If you talk with the Iranian people with the language of respect, we respond with the same language. But if they
here's David Ignatius. Okay, stop this one. Here's David Ignatius and his analysis of the interview.
So what I heard from Foreign Minister Arakchi was a description of where they would like to go in trying to satisfy the demands that the administration official conveyed to you. He said, first, we're seeking a win-win deal. What does that mean? He said that it means that the U.S. will be confident that the Iranian nuclear program will be peaceful. And there are various strategies they've talked about to assure the U.S., especially on enrichment, that they have talked in the 5 guiding principles that Arakshi referenced about a temporary suspension of enrichment for 3 to 5 years until after Trump is no longer president, and then a process that would make enrichment part of a civilian consortium in the region so that there would be controls to keep it out of the military
we'll cut out of this.
He talked...
three more data points, as if it weren't confusing enough. Here's the Financial Times, 107. They say that Iran would like there to be a conflict because that's in their interest. Iran is betting on war. Tehran thinks a drawn-out conflict could eventually yield a better deal than what Trump is offering today. So that's a new posture. They want a big war because they can get better terms. That presumably means they think they'll win the war. The AP 108 says that the embers still burn for the people who were in the streets. Iranians grieve defiantly for thousands killed in last month's crackdown. And then finally, Mark Penn has a op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal, 109, that looks at data and convincingly makes the case that MAGA approves of Donald Trump's types of interventions, that if he goes into Iran big, no ground troops, no extended conflict, no nation building, that MAGA likes that. The headline, MAGA voters back Trump's interventions. The idea that his base is, quote, isolationist turns out to be a myth. Thanks to the producers of the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm confident you just got the best summary of what's going on in Iran anywhere else in the media, but it doesn't tell us how this ends. So, Haima, how does this end?
Oh, man. I was hoping you go Larry first. Come on.
Yeah.
I think we've all been saying this for quite some time. I've been saying this. I think the president has said over the last 10 years that he was an anti-war president, will be anti-war president. And so when you talk about these sort of targeted strikes, even if they are small strikes, you have to explain the case. I think the thing that, and I've been a little bit more skeptical than I think some on this platform, and way more than Larry, but I think this is much different than Venezuela. This is much different than South America. When you go into the Middle East, and I think a lot of people in America have really extreme PTSD from the last 2 wars we were fighting for 25, 30 years in the Middle East. And so I think when you are going to Iran, you have to have a better case for having these strikes. Granted, I do not think that Iran should welcome this strike. They will not win this. It will not be good for their country. It will not be good for the region. And I think the president knows that. And so I don't know how it's going to end. I do think the president, we saw what happened over the last couple of days with all the assets moving closer to Iran and closer to the Middle East. I think he will reserve the right to strike, and he has shown that over the last year that he's not afraid to do it. And so I think that's one thing. The second thing, look, Congress is getting a little bit more active now. Larry and I talked about this maybe a couple weeks ago because of the midterms. And so they will have more opinions on these types of things because their careers hang in the balance of how well people think the president's doing, or if the president should go to war or not. And so I don't know what's going to happen. And I know we said this earlier, Mark. I don't know. You don't know. We don't know. But I do think this is going to be a little bit more of a conversation than Venezuela, than Greenland, than some of the other things that have happened over the last year because we're so close to the midterms.
Larry.
All right. I don't know what's going to happen either. Spoiler alert. But as we've mentioned over the last couple of days, all of the moves that the president has been making and the shuffling of military assets in the region are very similar to the moves that he has made in the past before he has ordered a military strike. When you say go into Iran versus Venezuela, I don't know what going into Iran looks like exactly. The assets that have been moved into the area are Navy assets, they're air assets, they're missile assets, they're rocket assets. I don't see troop movements. I don't see the mobilization of, the infantry and artillery to do a ground war. So I don't think that's the sort of thing that's going to happen. What struck me about the interview with the foreign minister, as much as I was able to see in between breaks on my radio show, was the fact that it happened at all, Mark.
Yes.
Which kind of tells me, listen, what I've been hearing from people that are close to the administration is that there is this feeling of confidence right now that things are moving in the right direction to end this regime because they are in such desperate straits economically and because the international oil situation is really damaging them. Their infrastructure is in trouble. And to me, that it was a sign of desperation for him to come on American television and try to send this message. I think that they are in trouble. Also, just quickly, I find it absolutely reprehensible to have that man representing that regime talk about how the American people are not respecting, or the American government is not respecting the people of Iran. We see how that regime respects the people of Iran. We saw what they did to the protesters in the streets.
Amen. Amen.
I understand it was a great get for Scarborough and Mika, and I know that it was a big news-making issue. But I hate when our platforms are used for their propaganda.
Well, that's just the nature of the world. But
I understand.
You're right. You're right to call it out. And it was a great get. And it was a very long interview. We showed you some of it, but the whole thing's quite remarkable. And then, as I said, Joe talked to a Trump official and got the reaction.